Morning.
Morning, how's it going?
Oh, fairly well. We keep getting rain.
You
Make-
guys live so good over there in Nebraska.
Oh, that'll come to a stop. If if the past means anything, that's only a temporary situation for us to have rain. So we'll take it while we get it.
You're only shooting for knee high by the 4th of July anyway, aren't you? The, isn't that the old saying for the corn, knee high by the 4th of July?
Yeah,
That
think
sounds
that's what my
about
dad
right.
used to tell
Around
me.
here, that's probably
in
going to
Pennsylvania,
be
but
above my head come the 4th of July.
yeah, right.
We've got a lot of irrigation in Nebraska. I think probably more than Iowa. You guys, at least traditionally, have gotten more rain, so had more of what we call dry land corn.
Yeah, we don't have much irrigation here in the state. So,
Really
It's
spot.
just, yeah, it's everywhere here. I bet the proportion of irrigated land to non-irrigated for corn especially is probably 3 to 1 irrigated, maybe more. Got to
yeah.
use up that aquifer, baby.
Yeah. I'm struggling with that right now with getting water use permits for our water production facility. So,
Yeah,
versus
yeah, we're
deep Jordan aquifer wells versus shallow alluvial wells. So, anyway, it's quite the challenge right now.
well, we're having fun with building a canal in Colorado to siphon off some of the water that was agreed to that we could do this back in like 1918 or something. And so our governor decided, well, we need to make sure we get that water that we're supposed to get. And it's like, well, yeah, if it gets that far,
Oh
we'll see
my.
what happens. It's only a few $100 million. What the heck, you know?
Pencil dust.
Greg, do we have a few others that are supposed to join us? Or is this kind of it?
Yeah, in fact, well, there's Scott, but we also have my colleagues that are Chris Klein and the writer, which I think is Carol Rowland on this one.
Okay.
In fact, yeah. So yeah, let's give us another couple minutes here.
Hey, Craig, something I'd like to visit with you a little bit sometime, not now, but if you have time, maybe this afternoon or sometime next week, I'd like to talk with you a little bit about Pike Alert and what you guys are doing with that.
I I would love to visit with you. However, I would recommend that you talk to Tina because she would have much better answers to your questions than I would probably.
Okay. All right. I think I've probably got her number. I know I talk to her once in a while, so.
Yeah, she could. You would be better off asking your questions to her. She deals in that whole world much and is much more in tune than I am, and I just kind of let her run with it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, sounds good.
Well, we've got a location for the next spring meeting.
What's that?
we're going to be at the Hyatt Regency in Lexington.
Oh,
So, yeah, the Randy, I think, had given me 4 hotels at one point quite a while ago, and I reached out to each of the 4, and 3 of them didn't have a space that would fit our needs or didn't have availability during the week that we had. But Hyatt Regency came through. They were at exactly the space we need and right in our budget, and I was like, all right, put us on the list. So
cool.
I'm reviewing and getting ready to sign the contract here in the next couple days.
Good. That'll be nice to have that off the list, huh?
Yeah. However, next fall is a no-go for Boston, unfortunately. It's just going to be too expensive.
So fall of 26.
Yeah. I think there was a misunderstanding in terms of what we would, I don't know, what the budget was or something. Because when they quoted me the rooms, I was like, okay, forget catering, meeting space, AV. The rooms alone are over our budget. So I think we're going to have to pass. Thank you very much. And so anyway, she said, yeah, they're pretty, April and September are both very busy months for them. And for all hotels in Boston. So, and I was thinking about checking in on that one, Craig, that you had forwarded to me, that you stayed at recently, but I don't even know if it's worth it. I'd be willing to bet that because this other one was over $300 per room per night. And we need to be more in the under $200 per room per night. And even then, we probably need to be under $180 if we can. So, yeah.
Well, you would probably be closer to that 300 plus mark on that hotel because it was right on the water and within
It looked
walk
like it.
of all the stuff.
Yeah, it was gorgeous, man.
Yeah.
Places will probably never go again, maybe Kalispell, but we had a great meeting in Jackson back in, I don't know, 2011 or somewhere back. I mean, it's been a while back, and how that, got lucked into, because it was actually at a resort. It was a Snow King resort, and every room was a suite, it was a condo. Had fireplaces in the rooms. It was just amazing.
Every time I hear about that, I'm glad you guys had that experience, but every time I hear about that, I'm so bummed that I wasn't a part of it back then, because that sounded like such a good time. And it was a mistake too, right? I mean, there was like the hotel you were supposed to be in a hotel, but it was undergoing remodeling, and so they'd already contracted with you guys, so they had to put you up in these little condos or whatever. And yeah,
I don't recall, but that could be it. I know that the fortune of getting that accommodation was it was unreal, because you would, even back then, I mean, now, Jackson is just out of everybody's price range. And then Bozeman is a little bit the same. We had a meeting in Bozeman, and that was great. I think that was a Pure Exchange, if I remember correctly. And that was like at the Best Western, which is a pretty nice hotel there. And just the area and the vibe. I mean, actually went on horse-drawn wagons out to the dinner out.
Really? Wow.
Really? Yeah.
So, Greg, is the backup then Maine? Is that what we talked about?
Portland, Maine. Yeah.
Okay.
And I already reached out to Chris, but Chris is being replaced here very shortly. In fact, I've already replaced his contact information on our all those documents on the admin page, but on the members page. But anyway, Chad Huggins is going to be the new guy, but Chris is going to work with Chad to help with the transition, all that stuff, and the meeting. So, and even then, I was just looking, and we got to get started in this meeting soon. I know that, and it looks like I'm going to be the only one from CTC. But just looking at some of the hotels in the Portland, Maine area, and I just only looked very briefly at a couple of them, and some of the bigger like conference hotels didn't seem to have the space that would, that we would need, like at least a 2,000 square foot space. And I could be looking at that wrong, and maybe I just didn't, I don't know, dig in enough. But yeah, I guess we'll find out here fairly shortly, because I'm going to have to start seeing what's what. Because if that's not a possibility, then we got to look somewhere else. I can't imagine that Portland wouldn't have a place to put us up, or to have a meeting space that would be big enough for us. But there's not a lot of hotels in Portland. Conference hotels. So
Yeah, I was going to mention
right.
that
hey Tom.
Yeah, I was going to mention we did have a Clear Roads meeting in Portland, and we caught a real nice deal where they had just redone a hotel in a nice part of their town. And we had our meeting there, and it was a beautiful hotel. I doubt we'd be able to get in there again. Just kind of caught in at the right time too.
Well, that's a good point, because we have met there before. So I'll go back and find out which hotel that was. Obviously, we have that on our meetings page, and I'll include that in my list of hotels to look up. Good point. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. Today we were taking a while. I don't want to go through the whole backstory, but essentially with contracting and things like that, we didn't get started on the 23 synthesis projects for a while, and thus because of that, and there was 4 of them. So we're just now getting started on the 24 synthesis, or there's 3 of them. Yeah. Anyway, so now we're on the 24 synthesis projects. We're kicking 2 of them off right now, and then we'll kick the other 2 off probably the end of the summer. And the reason why we went with this one and the what was the other one called? It was Snow and Ice 2030. Essentially, it's looking ahead to what future Snow and Ice might look like 5-10 years from now. And the reason why we went with these 2 is I just thought it wasn't a big deal, but I thought these would be done before we start our next research cycle, and perhaps these projects would give us some insight into our research agenda for next year, how we might approach that, especially when it comes to projects that would have a larger implementation component to them. So yeah, I just figured these would be without anything more than that to go on. I just figured rather than rolling the dice, let's go with these 2. And so here we are. So this meeting is simply to kind of walk through what exactly we're looking to get out of this project. Again, this is a synthesis, so CTC will be conducting it. It's a synthesis project. For those of you who may not be quite as familiar, they're not obviously as involved as a research project. There's no testing. There's no really deep analysis. It's really more of a collection of information that we're gathering, and we're still synthesizing it. We're doing some sort of analysis or putting structure to it so that it's digestible and able to take those outcomes and apply them. It could be taking this project, could be a first step towards looking at that other project that Mike, you had suggested this last time around. It was a little bit more expensive one, but maybe this is, kind of that first look that we need in order to feel more confident going forward with something like that in the future. So anyway, so the way we normally do these is I'm going to turn it over to the project chair, which in this case is Mike Madison, and have him just kind of start talking us through the background and need for this. And then I just would look for everybody else on this subcommittee to jump in with their thoughts. Let's just talk through it as much as we can, and then I'm recording it so that I'll pass that along to my colleagues, and then they'll draft up a scope of work for the synthesis project, and then we'll share it with you guys before we actually get rolling on it. Make sure you don't have any revisions or comments that would alter the path. So I guess that's about it. So Mike, why don't you give us the walkthrough, please?
Sure, yeah. So very personally for me, being on the Clear Roads, and in the past have worked with NCHRP and a number of research projects, with winter maintenance, and maybe with maintenance in general, but I think with winter maintenance, maybe more so than I think maybe more so. It seems like with pavements and things like that, where they're looking at mixed designs and, a lot of the factors that go into that, there's maybe a little more central ability to take those research efforts and get them out into practice and start using them. In winter maintenance, I'll start with it, just there's been a lot of maintenance research done, winter maintenance research done. Um, Clear Roads has 111 projects on the list, and Aurora has 83. I didn't really go in and look at, how many NCHRP and ones like that, but there's clearly a lot of research that's been done. And I've talked with Tom Renninger a bit about, well, how do we get this research into practice? Some of it having to do with materials and maybe with dashboards and some of the technology stuff. We kind of are able to do that from our operations division, but there are a lot of things that are practice that are more have to do with the equipment and the things that are going to be done by our practitioners out in the field. And it seems like it's difficult to get them to, first of all, even to get the information in front of the right people and then get, them to do something with it. And then to measure, did we actually get something out of it? Did we make changes that add value? Because that's what it's all about in the end. So in addition to how do we implement, I don't know if I wrote it into the original statement, but as I was thinking about it, I went, how do we how is the value of research measured? If we've got research projects, we've been doing this, we invest, all of us, into Clear Roads and to, ASHTO and to all of the different places. We might be Aurora members, Nebraska isn't. We were in the MDSS pooled fund, a research project that was very focused. Overall, with all of the research that's being done, and I think there's a lot of good research being done, we've got many reports, many, things. I've got papers strewn all over my desk on research projects, trying to read through and go, okay, if I understand it, then can I figure out a way to get it into practice? And it's that getting into practice part that I guess that I feel like for me and for us is a weakness. Maybe other folks have figured this out and do have some better things than what we do. And I wouldn't say that we don't have anything. It's just that we don't really have what I think is a good, here's how we do it. This is how we work with our districts. We've got things, maybe some innovation projects or things like that, and say, hey, we want somebody to try this, see how it works. There's probably a lot of things that can be done, with respect to policies, procedures, training, and administration. So those were just a few of the things that I took note of. And especially, do we have any way to say, hey, this research, on the basis of it, we went and did something and we improved the results that we get, or we are able to get the same results for less money, or whatever that is. Has somebody figured out a way to do that? So kind of the idea was, between the many states in Clear Roads, and survey can go beyond Clear Roads to cities, counties, Kevin is here. So there's got to be some people that have figured out ways to do this that maybe are what I would consider best practice. Maybe we all would consider to be best practices. If we can identify those and sort of maybe get a template or a guidance document. I don't know if that in this type of project, in a synthesis project, if that can be a deliverable. But if it were, that would be one of the things I think would be important is, here's a guidance document. We've looked at how different entities do this, and as a result can kind of look at these are some of the practices that work the best and get that synthesized into something that we can kind of take, not too lengthy, something that's, kind of concise and gets to the point and says, here's what works. And here's why it works. And if you want to do it, here are some steps that you can use to do it. So I guess that's pretty much what I was thinking in this project.
Good. Thank you very much, Mike. That was really a good comprehensive deep dive there. I've got a couple things, but while I'm waiting on that, does anybody else have feedback on what Mike has shared with us?
A couple things. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So what jumped out at me, kind of listening to what Mike was saying and just trying to just mentally picture, trying to visualize what Mike was saying. I jotted some quick notes down. I think with something like this, when you have so many different types of projects, meaning projects for material testing, projects for equipment operation, projects for training, projects for purchasing equipment, projects for building a structure, blah, 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 blah. I almost think, not that you should necessarily need to go into the weeds for each one, but lump those types of projects into maybe like some flow charts or some sort of, not org chart, but I guess a flow chart is, and again, I'm just as high level, like a flow chart that would be beneficial for the type of research. Basically like for your, taking into consideration your audience, what the research is actually about, like what types of funding there are, materials, whatever it might be. And another thing that I think might be useful is teaching people or having some sort of document on how to do a cost benefit analysis when it comes to something like this. Only reason I'm saying that is because the first time I was ever asked to do something like that, I'm like, what do I use? Like, I can tell you how much money I have, but how do I come up with the benefit? And maybe if there's some way to come up with a process or like some sort of document for, within the flowchart process that talks about how to actually conduct one of those and the things that you're going to need to even have at your disposal to be able to do something like that. Because I know the first time I was asked to do one, I'm like, I know the basics of this, but I don't even know where to start. And if you're talking about implementing a project and then telling people how to do it and then getting buy-in and then being able to show after it's implemented, and is it something, worth us doing? These are the benefits that we got. Was it worth the funding? Was it worth was it worth the effort? If we've done it in a pilot program, is it now, did it show that it was worth expanding to, 3, 4, 5 other, facilities or divisions or offices or whatever? And another thing I think would be good is some sort of web link repository, that's used to gather data for something like this. Meaning it doesn't necessarily it could be just a simple, I don't know, like a Google Maps page or something, or a winter uh, materials page or something like that people can use. What kind of, whatever the states or whoever you're going to talk to, where did they get the information that they use to come up with these implementations or something like that? So I just think using technology to help gather the data even after the synthesis is completed may help. Those are the things that jumped out at me. That's all.
So I would say you know, doing benefit cost ourselves would be beyond the scope of this synthesis project, Scott. Unfortunately, we don't have the budget for that. But
I didn't mean doing it.
Oh,
What I was,
okay.
yeah,
Okay.
I didn't mean doing a cost benefit of this project. I'm talking about within the document saying that these are, so, and I may be misunderstanding the purpose of the project, but I thought it was, what practices do you use to get a project implemented within your organization? And that's like the steps that you would go through to take the project or the research, take the findings out of it, and then use it in your organization. Well, if you do this in such a like a pilot mode where you don't typically, let's just say you've got 7 facilities and you've got this project where you want to implement like cost savings or reduction efforts at a facility, and you've got a ClearRoach project and you implement it in a small, like one of your 7 facilities. And now in order to expand it across your organization, leadership comes to you and says, well, show me that project implementation was a success. What did we get out of this? And
yeah, and I think I totally understand what you're talking about there, Scott. And that's kind of what I was thinking is, if, you know, through just the survey and just kind of looking around, seeing what we can find, I think it's very likely that we might find a process like that where we can identify it, pull it out, including, somebody that's done a benefit cost or some kind of, applying value to the research, which was what, Mike had mentioned earlier. And, how is the value of research measured? Sort of like a feedback loop. It's if anybody's got that kind of thing. Yeah.
Right.
So, and then the other, you had talked about a web link repository. I think that, I know the way that my colleague Chris Klein and sort of manages these projects is one of the ways that she displays the information is through, there would be a number of web links included in this document. And I think, that would be one way to, you could have it within the, the body whenever you've got, talking about a particular method that a state is using, you could use, some kind of link, whatever's available online. You could link to that. You could also put it in an appendices or something like that with proper references so that you know what you're linking to. The other thing I was thinking too here is it depends on what we find and how much we find. It could be that we don't get, well, it could be that we end up we could display this as almost like case studies where whatever aspect of implementation, there might be one state that does a really good job of taking the research and getting it into the field. And so what do they, how do they do that? So we get into like a case study of how that happens. There could be another an agency that does a really good job of taking something that they've implemented in the field and measuring its value and reporting that back, and having, some numbers put to that. And so that could be another case study. I mean, I'm just making stuff up a little bit here, but I think that it could also be just depending on how much information we find and, how deep it is and how many different states are doing it. I mean, we don't want to restrict ourselves to a case study method if there's 15 different states that are doing some really cool things. And we don't, 15 case studies would probably be too much for this project. But at the same time, if we only find like 6 or 7 that are worth a real deep investigation, then perhaps case study method would be one way to present. Those are just some thoughts I had as I was going through listening to your comments.
Yeah. And, the benefit, and I think part of it is how it's communicated. I mean, even for us, it may be that there's a fair bit of research that is being used to some advantage, but we're not really, our communication isn't getting that to where it's visible. So, I think that's part of it too. You do these things, and if you're getting it out to whoever, whether it be our laboratory, You know, Jasmine's doing a lot of stuff. She's used a lot of research that's been done over the years to improve the way things are done in the lab. Whether it's some of the technologies that we're getting out there, things like AVL and you know, weather forecasting services and things like that. A little more on the technology side, RWIS, the whole RWIS bag. Some of those, I think, you know, they are field things. You know, even that are our people in the field using all these technologies that we're putting out there for them. Yeah, we put AVL in all the trucks. How are they using it? Where's the value coming from? And so it applies to a lot of things. And then if we've found that certain chemicals work better under certain conditions and so forth, which we have, there's tons of research on that. Are people using that to their advantage? Probably, but I don't know that, you know, I'm curious how others are both getting it out to people to use and then how they're getting the feedback that says, yeah, this, you know, what you brought us is good, or no, you know, we tried it and it really didn't work the way we thought it would. Things like that. And case studies might be where a lot of that would come, you know, would come out.
You know, one of the things that we do, CTC does for Clear Roads every few years is we do the implementation survey, where we go out, but it's just for Clear Roads projects. That's not, I mean, obviously that is not what we're limiting ourselves to on this. We're looking at how states and other agencies are implementing any kind of research that's being done. But it could be, the last time we did this was 2023, so I think we're probably due next year to run through this again. But that could be also a good reference point for us to start, you know, because that's, in that particular case, states are going through saying, hey, we've done something with this project or with that project. And so that would be another point of reference for us to start digging around it. And that'll be one of the literature pieces that we're going to use as a jump off point, I think, to start that in the survey and as well as other things. But I'm just saying that, you know, as you were talking, I was like, oh yeah, that's right, we do that implementation survey, and it's got quite a few results. I think we got them from every state. So the 36 of the 39 member states responded. All right. Does anybody else have something that they want to add at this point?
Sure, Greg, Clark Moe here. Sorry I'm late.
Hey, Clark.
Hey, Clark.
Well, I was going to mention, this is Tom Peters, and I asked Clark if he could come and join this group. Clark has had a focus on what we refer to as innovation, but it's very similar to implementing research activities and new ideas. And so I thought it'd be real good, number one, to have him be involved with this. And Mike, he unfortunately missed your introduction, but I think a lot of what you said in terms of what you're targeting to do or targeting to receive from other states, he's been involved with when you talked about, you know, procedures and how you do, you know, notify this and that. He'll be a great resource to share that with you. And get ready for some of that stuff. It's kind of interesting the way it looks, but he's been involved with this, trying to move this forward. And we've had a couple different strategies that we've tried. Again, MnDOT being a collection of 8 or 9 districts and little fiefdoms, as I like to call them. He's found that I use the analogy that it's like a bunch of children. We have 8 children. We love them all dearly, but they all have different needs. And so that's kind of the way we got to work things. But that all said, Clark will, I think, be very helpful and very interested in seeing how this group works and what we progress on. So sorry, that's my feeble way of introducing him to you down the road. So
And on that note, Tom, thanks for the invite to this group. I look forward to Forward. I see that the meeting is being recorded, so at my leisure, I can go back and pick up whatever Mike might have brought forward, but glad to be joining the group. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you. Glad to have you part of it.
Yeah, these meeting recordings are typically just for internal use. I can post them if you want. I can share them or post them on the members page. So I'll probably do that for this one because I know there was Todd Law also unfortunately got double booked here and couldn't join us. So yeah. All right. So yeah, I think what I'm hearing here is that there's a number of ways to sort of attack this, and it's not really for me to determine how best to do that. My colleague, like I said, Chris Klein, she's the expert in this, and she's got a really good approach. So I'm going to share this recording with her and let her and Carol Rowland, who's the writer on this, they both have really good ideas on how to frame this scope of work. So they're going to draft it up and then share it with you all for a look through before we actually get started on the project. But yeah, I think just I know that research, this question that we're having is not obviously unique. A lot of states have this question. Every state has this question, I would venture to say. And I don't know how many have great answers for it, but I know a lot of folks, just having been in the transportation research industry for the last 25 years, I know a lot of folks ask this question themselves a lot and have tried a number of different, approaches to how to solve this, both successful and unsuccessful. And so I don't know there's any one right way to do it, but there may be multiple methods that could be used depending on your state and what might be the right fit for you and your organization. So I'm hoping that, we find some really interesting, some really interesting examples of what states have tried to do. And I think not just identifying success stories, but also identifying where things may have gotten tripped up, they started down the road, but they didn't finish because, well, why? And that's one of the things that we ask in our research implementation survey that we did last in 2023 is what was the stumbling block for you? Was it, your management, executive level, wouldn't provide funding, or there wasn't, proper communication, as, Mike had mentioned earlier, whatever the case might be. So I think that would be another critical thing to bring out of this so that we can learn lessons and perhaps, you might find that it's like, well, yeah, that particular stumbling block, it's probably can be a stumbling block for us too. So maybe we don't try that one, but what about this one? So yeah, I think that there could be, this is a really cool project. I think there's a lot of really neat things that could be learned from this. I look forward, when I came in, when I started managing Clear Roads, I was not a winter maintenance person. I had come from backgrounds in freight and asset management and just general construction, research, but I became more and more interested in winter maintenance. But this particular project, I think is even more interest to me because of the research management focus on this in general, and just finding ways to get the research in the hands of those that need it. So I think it was a great project, and I really do look forward to seeing how this turns out. I don't get super involved in this, in these synthesis projects other than the scoping meeting here. And then just so you know, these projects, synthesis projects, we don't typically, it's not like a regular research project where with a number of deliverables, perhaps 6, 7, 8, 9 of them throughout the course of the project that we meet regularly to present those different deliverables. This will be more of again, they're going to, draft up the scope of work, share it with you, get your feedback, revise as necessary, and then get going on it. And then you're maybe not, because they're in that first scope of work, they're going to lay out the questions that they're going to ask in the survey. So that's one of the usually one of the first meetings we have on any project is to review the lit search and see what the, draft survey questions are and revise them as you guys see fit. But that'll be included in this draft scope of work that we're going to share. So really after that point in time, the next thing you'll see is the draft final synthesis report. So, so this one is less on you guys in terms of your, burden to meet on these projects and review a bunch of deliverables. So that's a good thing too. So anyway, all right. Well, I think that I have most of what we're going to need. There may be, when I share this recording with my colleagues, they may have some follow-up questions. And so we could probably handle that through an email. So I don't imagine we would have to meet again. But anyway, I think that's probably all I need for today. Does anybody else have anything that they want to share that maybe wasn't brought up that they thought should be before we sign off?
Just a question, Greg. They'll put together a scope of work that will have what the deliverables are, and we'll have the opportunity to comment on that or suggest or question, whatever.
Yeah, and when you say deliverables, it's really more, the only deliverable really is going to be the synthesis report. Other than the survey questions, and they'll, in the census report, you'll see the responses they get, and they'll be summarized and everything. But really, what you want to, I think, look for here is there's a pretty nice write-up on what it is that they're going to be looking for, the kind of information that they're going to try to gather, how they're going to try to present it, those kinds of things. And so, hopefully, and I'm sure it will, but it'll capture what we've said here today. And so really you're just looking for the, feedback on those kinds of things that they're going to be looking to collect. Information they're going to collect, the draft survey questions that the survey questions they're going to be including. You'll definitely want to take a close look at that and provide some feedback on those survey questions. Make sure that, if there's something they're forgetting, that they have that included. Or maybe that kind of question won't go over well, or you won't really get much from that question, so maybe ask it this way. Those kinds of things are going to be probably the most important feedback you can give on this scope of work.
And I guess the other thing that I was kind of wondering about is, as you said, case studies, what those look like beyond just the survey. And then, how that comes together, how that, who would have the case study done, on them, or who, participates in that. And I'm kind of curious as to what those are, how that would look in the event that that's where this goes.
Yeah, and that really is going to be one of those things that do the survey and they see how much, information they get and what depth of information they're going to get. That's when they determine whether or not it makes sense to even do present it in case studies. And then if it is something that they're able to collect and present in case studies, that's the other thing. I think that it would be important to have contact information on a lot of this stuff. On a number of these methods, so that you can reach out to the person at, I don't know, wherever, Minnesota, that whoever it is that's, been instrumental in the process for implementing, or this, or this feedback loop, whatever it is, then you have somebody that you can talk to get as much information as you need for your own state. But yeah, so how they're going to be, again, it's once we find out what kind of information we have, then we'll determine if it's, going to be case study, if best presented as case studies. And again, this is me talking. I am not the one doing this work. So I'm just, I may be talking out of place here, and I hope that I'm not, but I don't think that, like presenting as case studies doesn't put any more, it doesn't change the depth of this particular project and the amount of work that goes into it. It's just a different way to present the information that you're collecting. You know, there's still going to be, you know, information on the, you know, there's still going to be what would we get from the survey, and then, you know, some sort of write up on the various things that we've learned, links to where you can find out more information, contact information to reach out to somebody to get more for yourself. So again, this is a starting point, it's a jump off point. It's not going to be an in-depth analysis, but it should provide you everything that you need based on what's out there, what we're able to find, and enabling you to learn more about those particular practices so that you can see if they make sense for your state. I feel like I'm kind of BSing you there a little bit, but I think that's the best I can do at this point in time.
Greg, quick question. Maybe I'll pick this up in the recording, but is a case study to be part of this effort, or?
It might be. And so, yeah, right. It depends on, Clark, it depends on how much information we get and the depth of it. I mean, if we get, you know, if there's like 15 to 20 different states doing some really interesting things, then, you know, it doesn't make sense to do 15 to 20 different case studies. We don't have the funding for that. But if it is, you know, 6 or 7 that are doing some really good stuff and we have some in-depth information on those, and maybe it does make sense to do case studies. That's really all.
Then that would be performed by CTC, not the members on this call.
Oh gosh, yeah, no, everything here is being done by CTC. Yeah. So
Okay.
it would be if it was like 6 or 7 states that had some really interesting information, that had the depth of it, that we found out through either the lit search and more likely the survey, then you know it would be the writers and for this project that they would reach out to those individuals and probably have a telephone interview follow-up where they, you know, get more information from them. And perhaps create a case study out of it. Again, I brought up case studies. I know I did, and now I feel like I've taken us down this road a little bit, but I don't know that that's the way it's going to work out. So,
well, let's wait and see on that. And you know, best practices is what's in the title of it, and that's really, you know, I guess from my thinking, that's what I'm interested in. Who's doing this well, that's getting results that they think are important, that work for them. And if we can get something, I said, maybe sort of a guidance document that says, here are things that have worked well for people and how they implement, how you can do it, you know, so we can pick up on that. However that comes together, but that's the content that I'm particularly interested in, is sort of a how-to manual.
mm-hmm. And I think it's important to point out that some of these, you know, a synthesis report can be 50 or 60 pages at times, but you guys want to take some of the important practices that are being taken on out there and put into something that's smaller and more digestible, like you're saying, more like a guide or a reference document. So I think that's an important part of this too, with appropriate links and contact information. I think that's going to be key.
Thanks for joining us, Todd. Good to have the chair on board. Oh, you're still
on mute,
quiet.
Todd.
Microphone's not working.
Yeah. Still no.
Still no?
No, now you
Yeah.
are.
Oh. I didn't hear him.
I heard him just for briefly there.
Oh.
Am I back?
Oh,
Yeah.
there you are.
It was jumping from that podcast to I double booked. I told Greg I double booked and the podcast with Rick Nelson. So
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, good. So thanks for joining us after you got done with Rick. Those are good things too. Very worthwhile.
yeah, it was
Yeah,
definitely
I think we're close to wrapping up, probably. You know, depending on if you got any questions, Todd.
I don't. I'm excited for this. It's one of the things that I know Clay was talking about a lot was implementing our research projects, not letting them sit on the shelf. But I think we've kind of set ourselves up for using our research projects a lot better. And, Greg showed me today, going through the all project search, and you just start typing in and it populates a list. I mean, that's huge. Whatever we're looking for, or before you had to know what Clear Roads project it was. And now we're starting to bring back a lot of those older ones and renewing them, we'll call it. So, I think this is a perfect project and perfect time for it.
Yeah, Clear Roads, and you guys have done some really good things with, like you said, taking the next step on a number of projects. Like Todd, just your example with the capital projects and the winter maintenance burden associated with those, going, taking the first stab at it and creating a spreadsheet tool that applies a cost to these, a winter maintenance cost to these construction projects. And now, 9 years later, taking that and improving that tool, making it an online tool. So Clear Roads is done, as I've said a number of times, when I took over Clear Roads from Colleen back in 2015, I still think we were really more focused on some of the, I guess you call the basic winter maintenance research type activities. But in the last, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, somewhere in that range, it's been a lot more of, okay, we've got the research, we've got a lot of the results now. How do we turn it into things that are going to help you guys day to day? So there's been a lot more training that we've been creating, a lot more tools, some online versions of tools that are, more user friendly. And so, yeah, there's some really cool things going on just within Clear Roads. But again, I assume you guys don't really want Clear Road, like the things that Clear Roads has been doing. I assume that. You can find that on our website, so you don't need that. It would just really be more a focus on states, bigger cities, things like that. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, again, I think we have what we need to move forward. And so, like I said, the next step is we'll draft up scope of work, share it with you guys, and see what kind of feedback you have on it before we get going on this. So thank you for your time today. Have a good rest of your day. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks.